Yeah, so what have you been doing during this time of COVID?
Well, I haven't been as adventurous as you guys have. Um, I actually put on your. What I do is I do my research. So I'm doing a lot of like research with regards to all of these new topics that I'm unfolding. I have 3 separate projects that I'm working on right now, and what's fun is like I do my research and I'm doing all this kind of stuff, and then I have like you guys walking on like the TV, but like you're a very low volume because I'm reading and doing all this kind of stuff. So it's just like this. It's like this weird like TV moment where it's kind of like, but I don't move the 3D thing around. So it's like kind of centered in like one specific location.
Yeah.
Matthew's the one who like listens to everything that you're saying, and every now and again you'll hear it. I'll hear it through the room, but it's more sort of, for me, it's an atmospheric experience.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, it's really it's quite lovely, and I'm just working on these 3 projects. One of which is called Elevator, which is a collective effort. I'm working with Mia Raveno and Elizabeth Tice on a script, and we are a collective called Thought. And Thought is this kind of fictitious tech company, and Elevator is like this really long, well, it's like based off of the 2-minute pitch cycle, like your elevator pitch. And so this is sort of something it's like written, and what we've done is we've gone through a bunch of tech pitches from, the company that wants to get Series A funding to like Apple, right? So we take all of this language and then we reformat it into this like really long script in this sort of like poetry form. And it's going to be performed by 3 actors, and that's going to premiere this September. So that's been it's interesting because it's like the first time working on like scripts, and that style of writing. And thank God Mia Raveno is like, she's a playwright and she's worked in TV, and Liz and I used to work together in tech before, or like the startup industry, and so it's been really interesting. And what happens is like it comes as a cacophony, but there's like the Premiere Crew version of it online right now.
Oh wow!
It's on our website, which is thoughtthought.us. So it's THOUGHT, then again .us. So that's what we've been working on, and it really kind of like goes into how sexist or misogynist and how racist all of the technology that we use actually is. And so, and like who, and also really looks at AI and machine learning in a very specific way. And so we really like get into these sort of nitty gritty details of like how does it happen that certain types of facial recognition don't recognize certain types of bodies, or certain types of, or like certain certain zip codes, or even like names or anything like this. It's so it's really thinking about like design in terms of technology, and really kind of understanding that the person in the center of the design that they're designing for is not necessarily, it's specifically for like the cis white male like Silicon Valley like dude that's making $250,000 a year, and so it's really interesting to kind of really dive deep into sort of like the beginnings of all of this. And I've been taking a course with the School of Poetic Computation. It's called Dark Matters, and it's taught by American artists. And one of the very first things that you learn is that it's the first computers, or what they used to call computers, were actually women. Did you know that? It's crazy. And
Wait, they called computers women?
Women were called computers.
Oh, I know that some of the first computers were made by women because they were woven.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that they were woven.
There were bits of computer that needed to be like woven together. So they got women to do it because it was like women's work.
Oh, really? And the women's work, other side of women's work for computation was sort of like, you know, I don't know if you watched Hidden Figures, but all the women had to sort of like move like cables and move like different, like all of the stuff that would happen, sort of that happens kind of in our phones innately, kind of, you know, all this kind of stuff. And when women kind of started knowing a lot about like computers and computing and all this kind of stuff, they actually decided to just push them out and like get rid of them altogether because the men were like jealous. And so like this is the history, but also it's interesting because it actually, like the course actually, you start off the course with understanding the history of the Native American people who were in Palo Alto.
Oh.
Right, and then like the entire history of like how exactly Silicon Valley came to being.
Wow.
Right, from like the pushing out of the Native American population to then sort of like Manifest Destiny and like all of this kind of stuff, and how it kind of snowballs into this kind of global, like, you know, a control of technology. It's quite interesting.
Wow, and so that's the course you're taking that goes through that whole process?
Yeah.
That
and then that
really
kind of lends itself to the elevator project, because like within this kind of like monologue, you're getting these bits and pieces of like understanding how like within the pitch where these concepts actually fit in, right? Or like what actually happens, you know what I mean? But we're also very interested in sort of like how like where they get money from, and like it's mostly venture capitalist money, right? Which is your pension money primarily. And all of that money, when you look at the demographics of like who are pitching and who actually gets money, very seldomly is it women, and very seldomly is it like people of color at all. So it's really about kind of understanding sort of, while we think that we are grappling racism and we're sort of like really like unfolding and like talking about these things and like trying to sort of work towards a better world, but like the system by which we are building the world is based off of a system that is kind of steeped in these issues.
Right. Do you think by like...
It's a very light topic.
No, it's not, but that's okay. Do you think that by exposing some of these things, it can change the system? Because ultimately, the people with the money are going to make decisions. And right now, they're probably making them based on like people that they know, like it's connections that already exist. But do you think by exposing it and sort of like asking for more transparency, or just kind of like telling them like, hey, we know what's going on and this is part of the problem, do you think it'll change?
I really like hope so.
Yeah.
I never think, I always want to wish that anything that like I make or do can like change or, you know, alter somebody's perception or anything like that. But I also kind of think of like my artwork as record. I just don't want there to be a moment where like in the future, like these like, and they look back at this particular time that like nobody was talking about it, or like there wasn't sort of like a creative, you know, part of, you know, expression within the art world, I guess. But change is hard, you know, and that's that's why I'm really interested in the humanities, because like it's all about like, you know, how do you change somebody's mind? And
it doesn't all happen. And I'm not like saying, is your project going to change the world, Tiger?
I don't know.
Or just like really this, because it wouldn't just be one. It would be like if more people kind of
Yeah.
do things like this that expose what's going on. Like it would take more than just like the three of you
Right.
with this one project, of course, but like maybe over time, if more people sort of
Start
understand
looking at
it, I wonder if it'll put pressure on the people that ultimately have to make the decision to change it, because money still holds so much power, and
Right.
that's not gonna change for quite some time.
I mean, I feel like what would happen is that, aesthetics is definitely a political choice and situation. And I think that, when a certain aesthetic kind of like falls out of favor, they just kind of evolve it and change it into something else, right? I mean, we speak about this with regards to sort of like the transition from slavery into the prison industrial system, or like we speak about it, like when you think about sort of like colonial power and sort of like this, all these countries around Africa are like independent, but essentially like the sense of control, or like the centers of control are not necessarily within the country. The country doesn't have that much control over itself. It still is held by former colonial powers, right?
Right.
So I just think that, when you point it out, to the tech world, like this is what's happening, or like you guys, whatever, I think it's just going to evolve into something else, right?
Right.
And it's this kind of like, exactly what happens like always, like, when we talk about like, oh, we don't see enough like representation on your website, we don't see enough like all of these, things, and then they'd start employing people of color and all this kind of stuff, but then it's only like client facing, right? But intrinsically, like the heart of it is still like held by very few people, like a very like non-diverse sect of people.
Are there other things that you've experienced during the past 3 months, not related to work, that are, something that's been on your mind? I mean, I think a lot of people have been thinking about, or at least I have, how my relationship to time changed with respect to the pandemic, and you being an artist, you were already a manager of your own time, so maybe it wasn't as profound of a shift, but still having an inability to travel freely and visit with people, was there an impact on how you perceive day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think like earlier on, because like usually I'm really busy of the spring, right? And so the springtime is sort of like events central, and then summer for me is like, it's just like I only work out, and then maybe make some art sometimes, and I don't have that many emails. Like I get maybe like 2 emails a week, right? Like, but this summer is interesting because you get to do taxes now during summer. So,
Woohoo!
yeah, yay! I have actually felt there is, because you can't move, I feel that there is a sort of collapse of like certain borders, right? So, and also like time relates to this, where it's kind of like I can have conversations with people from all over the world that I typically wouldn't do, right? I have friends that live in Hong Kong or Singapore or wherever, and I can be like, oh yeah, let's like, it's midnight here, like I can have a conversation with you, like I think it would be like midday there, right? Or there is this kind of like now, with video chat and with all of this, there's this kind of like leniency towards having these kind of like conversations, I feel, and it happens on an international scale. That's like a big difference for me, and especially when like doing research where I have to do interviews with people like all over the world, it's like really amazing how like quickly people are able to just, I just called a friend of mine who runs a VC, and had a conversation with him, which typically, I wouldn't have been able to do, because, everyone's like busy and going to parties and doing
Right.
like, yeah.
Right, because you'd both be like orbiting in your own little worlds, in your own places, but now none of that's really. Everyone's just like home
Yeah.
or near a computer, near a phone, kind of all the time, and not really like, oh, sorry, I'm with people or whatever. You're always kind of available
Right.
to some degree.
To some degree, and
Yeah.
they have conversations with purpose now. I find myself less having these kind of like superfluous conversations. I feel like a lot of our conversations, like I've like looked back at, like a lot of my conversations were like, oh, let's meet here, let's do this, and then go to this place, and like go blah 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 or whatever, right? And then you meet at the place, and then you're like, cool, we're at the place, and then you're like, let's Instagram the place, and then you're like, cool, we Instagram the place, let's go back to our places or whatever, you know? Now it's sort of like I am really disinterested in that, because I've had time to be like, oh wow, I can call people and have like substantive long conversations for like an hour or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's something to like, I feel like being alone, I don't know, at least I've been feeling this. I don't know if it is something that everyone's been experiencing, but being alone and being in my head a lot more. I mean, of course, Mike and I are together, but I'm not kind of like constantly busying myself with other things, and I'm thinking, I'm like really like everything I feel, I'm like really feeling it. Everything I do, I'm like really truly doing it. And then I think that lends itself to having those sorts of real conversations with people, and like I'm not sharing, like the things that I'm sharing with people are, there's nothing that's shallow about it anymore, and not even in a negative way, you know, just like there's nothing that's like surface level. It's all like, if someone asks, how are you doing? Like I'm going to tell you how I'm doing. I'm not going to say like, I'm fine.
Right. Yeah, no, I
because
agree.
it's like all that's going on.
Right.
Right? It's not like, oh, I'm fine. I like went and did this thing. I went to this party, whatever, basic, like shallow level. It's like, well, like I thought about this thing, and I've been like reading up on this like really intense issue that I never knew anything about, or I've been, you know, like all these things that are just way deeper and sort of like more human connected.
Right.